Hey everybody, it's Ryan, and today we're going to talk about a very important subject. A lot of you motherfuckers out there might not take this video seriously, but I don't give a fuck. Let's get to the point, because this is actually a serious video. I've recently been diagnosed with ASD, which is adult spectrum disorder. I'm autistic, like Elon Musk. But fuck that motherfucker, he ain't got nothing on me. I'm also a gooner. Matter of fact, I'm one of the first gooners on the internet. I was actually one of the few men who first, I guess, publicly exhibited this behavior online. And obviously it resonated with a lot of other guys, because 20 years later, it's an entire movement. If you don't know what adult spectrum disorder is, or what autism looks like in adults, I'm going to explain it to you. And if you've never heard of gooners and you don't know what that is, well, I'm going to explain that too. I need everybody to suspend their judgment, okay? There's been a lot of videos about gooning recently because this thing is such a phenomenon that healthcare professionals, therapists, right-wing conservatives have chimed in on gooning in a very negative way. Now let's be really fucking clear. I am not for or against gooning in the same way that I am not for or against a person that chooses to have a polyamorous relationship. There are some people that are gooners, I guess, just because they're into it. But then there are other people who are gooners like me, and I'm going to put forth a theory. This video aims to pose a theory that gooning is a neurodivergent behavioral pattern and a form of stimming. If you don't know what stimming is, we're going to talk about that too. I'm going to try to make this video as simple as possible, using the most simplest language as possible, and I'm going to try to keep it brief. I'm going to be neutral about it. I'm going to present facts, and then I'm going to back it up with my own personal story. The reason why I'm making this video has multiple reasons. The first one is that I don't like the negative and abusive speech that is being used to talk about men and men who are a part of my community. As someone who's in therapy and discussing these things quite openly and candidly with my therapist, this might be helpful for other people who are therapists or healthcare professionals to maybe take a step back and reassess these behaviors. And even though I don't believe gooning is necessarily dangerous in of itself, it can lead to negative consequences. So I cannot talk about this and not talk about the negative consequences that can come from being a gooner. So this video posits that ASD, or autism in general, is the basis for why maybe a man will become a gooner. I don't know anything about women, I'm sorry. So for all the lady gooners out there, I'm sorry, I have to speak from a male point of view because I don't know what it's like to be you. But hopefully a very intelligent woman who is in this community might step forward and make her own video giving her own personal opinions about this stuff. Autism is the basis, with gooning being a form of stimming or self-soothing. I think a behavioral pattern that starts in childhood or early adolescence and is something that will become a lifelong project behavioral pattern for a lot of men. So first, let's define what is autism spectrum disorder according to Google Gemini AI, and then also from ChatGPT. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a developmental condition that affects how a person's brain works, leading to differences in how they act, interact with others, communicate, and learn. It's called a spectrum disorder because the signs and challenges can vary widely from person to person. So this is a very important first thing to understand. People who have these conditions don't all behave the same way. They manifest themselves very, very differently depending on each individual person. And I don't like universal statements. Universal statements are always wrong because they take large groups of people and they clump them all into one category, and it's extremely dismissive, it's disrespectful, and it makes a person come across as very unintelligent because they're not allowing for nuance on an individual level. Generally, people with ASD experience difficulties in two main areas. One is social communication and interaction, which might involve challenges with making eye contact, understanding social rules. Ha! That's a big one. Or having back and forth conversations. The other area involves restricted or repetitive behaviors and interests. This could mean having strong, focused interest in certain topics, needing strict routines, or engaging in repetitive movements like hand flapping. No lie, that is exactly what it says. Look, it literally says hand flapping. I should have said hand fapping. One of the problems that I've had my entire life I've been very, very socially inappropriate. I've definitely had problems being able to conform myself to social rules. And then the other thing is repetitive behaviors and interests. I'll talk about myself more, but that is 100% me. Having strict routine is also very important to me. And the ritualization of behaviors, which is totally a Gooner thing. The exact cause of ASD are not fully understood, but scientists believe it's a combination of genetic and environmental factors. It's important to know that ASD is not caused by vaccines or parenting styles. Early support and different therapies can greatly help people with ASD develop new skills and improve their quality of life. Great. Okay, now what does ChatGPT say? Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person perceives and interacts with the world. It is called a spectrum because symptoms and abilities can vary widely from person to person. Differences in social communication and interaction. Difficulty understanding social cues, like facial expressions or tone of voice. Challenges with back and forth conversation or forming relationships. That's very important. May prefer solitary activities or have unique ways of engaging with others. Preferring doing things alone is 100% me, especially when it comes to things like being erotic, sensual, and even sexual. Restricted or repetitive behaviors and interest, repetitive movements, rocking, hand flapping, lining up objects. Oh my God, they said hand flapping too. Intense, focused interest in specific topics or activities, strong preference for routine and predictability, distress when routines are disrupted, sensory sensitivities, over or under sensitivity to sound, light, texture, and other sensory input. May seek out certain sensory experiences or avoid them. This is crucially important, and this is what has led me, myself, as someone who has ASD, to come to this kind of like realization that my masturbatory practices, my ritualized masturbation practice, the routine of my practice, and the sensory experiences of the practice 100% relate to my ASD. Now, like I said before, I am speaking from my personal experience, my personal revelations. My feelings and my thoughts don't reflect everybody that goons, and my thoughts and feelings don't reflect everybody who has ASD. What causes autism? The exact cause of ASD is not fully understood. It's believed to result from a combination of genetic and environmental factors affecting brain development. It is not caused by parenting style or vaccinations, a widely debunked myth. Diagnosis, usually diagnosed in early childhood, often by age 2 or 3, though some people are diagnosed later in life. Diagnosis involves developmental screenings, behavioral evaluations, and assessments by specialists like psychologists or developmental pediatricians. Treatment and support. There is no cure for autism, but early intervention therapies and support can help improve skills and quality of life. Common approaches include speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral therapies, social skill training, yada, 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 yada. Now we're going to go back and to Google Gemini because I also ask what is neurodivergent stimming behavior, and I also asked that to ChatGPT, so let's talk about that. Neurodivergent stimming behavior, short for self-stimulatory behavior, refers to repetitive movement, sound, or actions that people, particularly those who are neurodivergent, use to help regulate their emotions, sensory input, and focus. While everyone might stim occasionally, like tapping a pin or twirling hair when bored or anxious, it's often more frequent, intense, and serves a more vital purpose for neurodivergent individuals. Purposes. Stimming serves various functions for neurodivergent individuals. It can be a way to manage sensory input for people who experience sensory overload, too much noise or light. Stimming can help regulate and reduce the overwhelming input. For those who need more sensory input, it can provide that. For those who need more sensory input, and I would put Gooners in that category of people who need more sensory input. Regulate emotions. Stimming can be a coping mechanism for strong emotions like anxiety, stress, excitement, or frustration, helping the person calm down or express feelings they might not be able to verbalize. Aid in focus and concentration. Repetitive movements can help some neurodivergent individuals block out distractions and stay engaged with the task. I'm going to come back to that one. I'm actually going to write that down. Self-soothe. Stimming can provide a sense of comfort and control, especially in unpredictable or stressful situations. Examples. Stimming can take many forms and involve different senses. Some common examples include motor movements, hand flapping, rocking, spinning, pacing, jumping, foot tapping, finger tapping. Visual, staring at lights, watching objects spin, repetitive blinking. Auditory, humming, repeating sounds or phrases, listening to the same song repeatedly. Jesus Christ, I can't even tell you when I was a kid how many times I would listen to my favorite song over and over again. I must have listened to some of my favorite songs like 100 times in a row. Tactile, rubbing textures, fidgeting with objects, scratching, hair twirling, and I would include fondling one's genitals. Oral, chewing on objects, sniffing objects, making repetitive mouth movements. Neurodivergent connection. Stimming is very commonly associated with conditions like autism spectrum disorder and ADHD, where differences in brain function impact sensory processing, emotional regulation, and attention. For neurodivergent individuals, stimming is often a crucial and healthy coping mechanism. It's important to understand that stimming is generally not something that needs to be fixed. Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. This is unless it's causing harm to the individual or significantly interfering with their daily life. This is where the harmful stuff starts coming in, or the self-harm, or masturbating to the point that it actually interferes with your daily life. Understanding its purpose and providing a supportive environment can be very beneficial. So ChatGPT basically says all of that. However, at the very bottom of and I recommend that you guys do this for yourself. I love AI, I love ChatGPT, I love Google Gemini, Claude, Grok. I use them all. I think they're a lot of fun. I take everything they say with a grain of salt. I'm not as freaked out or concerned about AI taking over the world as other people are. You know, I grew up loving Star Trek and Star Wars. At the bottom, it says, is stimming bad? Not inherently. For neurodivergent people, stimming is a natural coping mechanism and an important form of self-expression. It becomes a concern only if it leads to self-injury, it significantly disrupts daily function, it's socially stigmatized, leading to distress or suppression. Okay, now, all that being said, let's go to Urban Dictionary and read some of the definitions of gooning, because this shit is funny as hell. And look, if I didn't laugh about my mental and behavioral health problems, I would cry. There's actually a part of me inside that kind of wants to cry or tear up talking about it. However, I'm holding myself together for you guys. I'm not ashamed of being a gooner, but being a 45-year-old man who has suffered from this his entire life, there's almost a feeling of relief that comes from understanding myself in this way. It's also affirming for me to understand that my behavior isn't necessarily bad or wrong or some kind of like moral thing, because I'm a very moral, ethical person, but it could be part of like my condition. Gooning, according to Urban Dictionary. Gooning may be most simply defined as that state usually achieved after a prolonged edging session, when a man becomes completely hypnotized by the feeling radiating from his penis. Since a gooning state can only be achieved after edging, the man's dick will have become mightily aroused at this point, and every caress of the male genitals are subjected to will trigger potent elation. This guy concludes with, Gooning is not a narcissistic manifestation. Narcissism is extremely selfish, or is extreme selfishness, with a grandiose view of one's own talents. Rather, Gooning is closer to a meditation experience, where the mind and the body align, focused on a single thought or feeling, in this case, his penis. And I'm not going to read any more because you can go to Urban Dictionary and type in Gooning, and you can read all of these different descriptions from all of these men who obviously are Gooners. And one word that will keep coming up over and over and over again is meditation. This guy says masturbation so intense that it becomes a state of meditation that consumes you and provides endless pleasure. There's a lot of other stuff in here that's like negative. You get people making comments about Gooners being degenerates. And then, of course, you get into the whole pornography and porn aspect of Gooning. We're going to get there, everybody. Thank you. So if you're still with me at this point in time in the video, thank you for listening. It means you care about men's mental health. Just briefly, I want to get back to the focus and concentration, how stimming for ASD people might help them focus and concentrate, and that is 100% true for me. As you guys know, I'm an author. I've written a lot of books. I mean, they're not very good. They're books about magic and stuff. I mean, I like them. But one thing that I realized that I did while I was writing my books, or over the past couple of years while I've been writing my books, is that as I'm thinking about what I want to say, what I want to write, when I'm taking breaks in between writing a paragraph, that I'll have my left hand on my genitals and I'll be fondling myself, playing with my cock, playing with my balls, but not like stroking my cock, kind of like masturbating, because my dick doesn't get hard. But it's more like the sensation of me touching myself or squeezing myself that is soothing, comforting, reduces anxiety. And I have to say that I do that a lot. I do that while I'm driving, and I'll do that in my bed at night when I'm falling asleep. So for me, the act of touching myself or playing with myself, I guess you could call it that, fidgeting, fondling, is a form of stress relief. But it's also a way to help me focus on things. It helps my concentration. That might be common for a lot of guys, and that might be why you see meditation or meditative be a word that comes up very frequently in a Gooner's language in describing their practice. Now, I'm a yoga instructor. I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years. I've developed an entire system of yoga called Lazy Monkey Yoga. It incorporates martial arts, parkour, jujitsu, and martial arts. It incorporates Reiki, self-massage, acupressure, aromatherapy, and meditation practices. I also teach men's sexual kung fu. Y'all, I've made an entire lifestyle, built an entire lifestyle around what I do on a personal level and shared it with other people, unconsciously. However, now I am being super conscious and mindful about everything I say and do when it comes to this stuff. I'm a teacher. I was born to be a teacher. I like teaching people shit, whether it's yoga, whether it's magic or herbalism, or even talking about subjects like this. I love telling people about stuff that I find interesting. I actually teach Lazy Monkey Yoga and men's sexual kung fu on my OnlyFans. Why do I have an OnlyFans? Because it's literally one of the only platforms that I can be on online where I can monetize teaching people not only how to stretch, but guys also how to like masturbate more mindfully. I talk about mental health, behavioral health, sexual health, diet, and exercise. That being said, there are several things that I wrote down here that could be adjacent to Gooner culture, or if someone is a Gooner, they might be into. Taoist sexual alchemy practices is something that I've been very fascinated with and studied for 20 years. Sexual kung fu is part of that Taoist alchemy or practice. Tantra are tantric sex practices, which is also, once again, the art of prolonging pleasure for a long period of time in order to get into certain, I guess, mental spaces in your head. Oh my God, I'm going to totally talk about Kundalini Yoga at the very end of this practice, debunking Kundalini Yoga. So wait for it. BDSM culture. If you're someone who is neurodivergent and you're someone who needs extra stimulation or sensory input in order to like function well, BDSM is another path you can go down. So instead of just masturbating, it could be having somebody flog you or whatever. We are not talking about that. However, I'm including it as an example. Drug use, There are a lot of people that might incorporate drug use into their practice. I'm not gonna lie, I have used marijuana or cannabis as a substance, not only to help me practice yoga more deeply and mindfully, but I've also used it while masturbating, which gave me some really mind-blowing orgasms. However, I stopped using weed because now it just makes me tired. However, the use of poppers and other drugs can be used when people goon, and that can be very harmful. Weed, not so much harmful, but other drugs incorporated could be harmful. Addiction could be an end result of dabbling in both gooning and using substances. I suffered from alcoholism for a very long time. I got sober, but one of the things I realized over the past few years is one of the reasons why I drank heavily in the past was to try to control my ASD. So I totally used drinking as a coping mechanism. And just briefly to touch on that, I have extreme sensitivity to light, sound, commotion, and drinking to go into social situations was very, very helpful because all it does is just numb and dull your senses. And that's why I drank. The last thing is porn addiction. You know, I believe in moderation. I don't believe alcohol is bad. I don't think people that drink are bad as long as they do it moderately. I don't think weed is bad as long as you do it in moderation. I don't think masturbation or gooning is bad as long as you do that in moderation too. And what do I mean by moderation and gooning? One of the big things that you'll find with guys who are gooners is they will go on these gooning marathons where they might be home alone for like a day or two. So they pull out their porn, they'll masturbate, and they'll go into an edging session, a very prolonged edging session to the point of gooning. So there's something very important you need to understand. Gooning is not edging. An edging session is like if a guy sits down to masturbate and, spends more than, let's say, 15 minutes or 30 minutes doing his thing. Edging sessions probably last about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Maybe somebody will get up and take breaks, go eat, drink something, exercise, come back, and start up again. But that whole edging situation has to do with building up sexual energy, building up that sexual force, holding on to that force, and then at some point in time, releasing. So edging doesn't necessarily just have to be a session where you're sitting down for like an hour jacking off. It can be like masturbating frequently throughout the day, creating a feeling of arousal. A lot of guys like feeling aroused. I like the feeling of being aroused. I like the feeling of being aroused so much. I kind of like want to sit with it, you know? I kind of like want to just have that boner for a while. But an edging session becomes a gooning session when you are masturbating for a prolonged period of time. I'm talking like longer than 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Continuously. Once you get into that state of mind, you are a fucking fool. You're drooling. Noises are coming out of your mouth that you don't know where the fuck those noises came from. They come from deep, deep, deep down inside. From your balls. You might have involuntary spasms or other physical sensations. Shit, you might even lose consciousness a little bit. Might even become a form of light possession. We're not going to talk about spirit and spirit possession, okay? Because that's not bad either, but we're gonna save that for another video. I practice voodoo. But gooning is a buildup of sexual energy, almost to a point that it overhauls your entire system. And then when you actually have your orgasm, it's a sensation that I can't really describe. It's cosmic. It's nuclear, and it can be really super awesome. So once again, for me, sex, masturbation, edging, gooning, not bad things. Why are they not bad things for me? Because they don't prevent me from living my life. I don't miss doctor's appointments. I don't not write my books. I don't not teach my yoga classes in lieu of locking myself in my bedroom and masturbating for 10 hours at a time. That is when it becomes harmful. If you're a single guy and you're not interested in a relationship, which a lot of guys are not, a lot of guys who are gooners are solosexuals. That means they're more interested in having sex with themselves than with other people. Not bad, not wrong. It is not wrong for men to not want to be in a relationship. However, in the culture war that we're in right now, conservatives are telling men that if you don't want to be in a relationship and you don't want to have children, that you're some kind of degenerate, that you're not worth anything. And that's just not true. Throughout all of human history, we have had monks and sages, ascetics, tantrics, alchemists that have deliberately separated themselves from the world because they were more interested in their own self-development than engaging with community. So that is a bias that people need to fucking get over. But if you're a single guy and you've got 2 days off from work and you decide you're going to go to the grocery store and buy all your favorite food and your ice cream and bring it home, and you're going to watch movies, or you're going to watch porn, or you're going to like start gooning or start edging at a certain point in a time in the day, and you decide you're going to do that and you're going to keep doing it until you decide you want to finish, and you're not harming anybody, you're not doing illegal things, okay, you're not downloading kitty corn off the internet, then now we're getting into a value judgment where other people are starting to bring their own value systems and trying to superimpose it onto other people, trying to tell other people what to do. And I'm not a fan of people that like to tell other people what to do, especially what they do in their own bedroom and in the privacy of their own home. So for me, what I have found to be the dangerous aspects of gooning is this. Using some porn to become sexually aroused isn't bad. Porn isn't bad. Watching other people have sex, either for pleasure or just because they want to entertain other people with it, is not wrong. It's not bad. But consuming porn to the point that it rots your brain is not good. We know there's harmful effects of porn consumption in immoderate amounts. The other thing is the using substances, the poppers or any other kinds of drugs, and becoming addicted to drugs and drug abuse, gooning being a gateway into drug abuse and porn addiction. And lastly, becoming a gooner to the point that your life is no longer functional. It's preventing you from having meaningful relationships, friendships. It's preventing you from getting into a romantic or intimate relationship with someone if that's what you want. It's preventing you from going to work. You lose your job because you can't pull yourself away from the computer screen and you can't put your dick away. And a really, really big one, doing these in places where it's being a gooner and jacking off in places where it is inappropriate to do so. I am 100% guilty of pulling out my dick and jacking off in places that I shouldn't. I'm not going to talk about those things. Every guy that I know has done that. So being inappropriate with your behavior, I think, is definitely can be a problem. So now I got to talk about myself. How did I become one of the pioneers of gooning on the internet? Well, when I was a little boy, I was homeschooled. I was also raised a Jehovah's Witness, which is a cult. They're crazy conservative Christians. And being raised a Jehovah's Witness is like being raised in a bubble. Jehovah's Witnesses are not the only ones. There are many cults and closed communities that restrict people's access to the outside world. Being homeschooled also gave me a lot of time alone as a little boy. I think one of the reasons why my parents didn't put me in school was because of my behavioral problems. They might have recognized or noticed those things and been concerned about how I interacted with other kids. My parents did put me in a lot of activities that were very structured, like dance. I was a dancer for most of my life. Dance was a great outlet for my neurodivergent behavior because movement is something that I love. Walking, climbing things, dancing, practicing yoga, doing Pilates, going to the gym. I've always been a physical person. And my mental and behavioral health has always done better when I exercised more. So being a child alone and spending more time alone did give me more opportunities to masturbate more. And I think it is in the context of my childhood where I became more genital-centric, maybe than other kids. It definitely wasn't something I did in front of my parents, but I didn't hide it either. I just intuitively knew that I wanted to do that to myself or do that with myself, by myself. A little selfish, didn't want to share myself. And I'm still a little selfish. I still feel that way. I consider myself a solo sexual. That's someone who enjoys sex with themselves more than they do with other people. I do find having sex with other people enjoyable. I really, really like jacking off with other guys, but I'm not gay. My sexual orientation is really weird. I don't really have a sexual orientation. I'm not gay and I'm not straight. I'm kind of like nothing. That might be difficult to hear. You might not understand that. That's probably a subject of another video. But throughout my entire life, I've always been an overachiever. I've done a lot of great things in life. You can go to my personal website, philipdeal.com, and read my biography. You can see that I've done a lot of shit. And I've actually been able to achieve a lot despite the fact that I have some kind of spectrum disorder. And I've been able to achieve a lot in life, even being a gooner. So having ASD is just part of who I am. Intrinsically, it's just part of me. It's how I express myself in the world. Genetic factors, environmental factors all play a part. And being a gooner is part of my identity because it's something I do. And it's a shared interest I have with other men that are into the same stuff that I'm into. I feel I am kind of like a role model because I believe in healthy gooning, or using masturbation to get into a meditative state, into a state of meditation. And being like this has not prevented me from enjoying my life. It has prevented me from having deep interpersonal relationships in the sense of having a partner, like having a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife. But the realization I came to at the end of the day was that I should have been a monk. And I kind of like have a monk lifestyle. I'm a pretty solitary practitioner when it comes to my spirituality. And I just like being alone in general. My therapist and I are going to delve really, really deeply into my interpersonal relationships and with other people when it comes to like romance and stuff. However, at the age of 45, I don't really see myself getting into a relationship. I have a daughter, but I'm not interested in having more kids. I don't want to get married to anybody. And I sure as fuck don't want to live with another human being. Earlier today, I wanted to make a video talking about like where I was at spiritually. However, I ended up making this video instead. I was inspired to make this video. And I said I was going to talk about Kundalini yoga earlier. And you know, the very simple explanation for Kundalini yoga is the chakras system that's in the body that yogis refer to is actually just the endocrine system. What is the endocrine system? It's the system in your body that regulates your hormones and the release of certain hormones into your body and chemicals, like dopamine, like serotonin, testosterone. So when people that practice Kundalini yoga exercises that are trying to raise their Kundalini, what they're really doing is they're stimulating their endocrine system. And if you do it long enough and you do it right, then you're gonna be able to release those chemicals in the brain that will give you feelings of euphoria. And you know, I'm kind of a realist. I'm an existential mystic. And as an existentialist, you know, I really do believe that there is a very physical component to spirituality, one that can be explained through science, not necessarily through mysticism. And I think a lot of the spiritual experiences people have do specifically relate to hormones, chemicals going off in the brain. Not to put down all the great yogis and Buddhist sages of old, all the Taoist wizards of old, but there's a very real physical, scientific component to spirituality and meditation practices that don't have anything to do with God, don't have anything to do with spirits, and don't have anything to do with like mysticism. Same thing with out-of-body experiences, same thing with lucid dreams. Study under me, become one of my mentees in my spiritual program, and we'll talk about that kind of stuff. But hey, I hope you enjoyed this video today. This was a long-ass video. I knew it was going to be a long-ass video. Now I have to edit this video. If you're a therapist or a health professional and you like this video and you got thoughts about it, please drop those comments below. If you want to share this video with your friends, see what they think, drop your comments below. If you're a gooner, I want to hear what you have to say. And if you're some right-wing conservative Christian that feels like all men need to have wives and need to be producing children, you can go fuck yourself, because your belief system isn't the only belief system in the world. There's also Hindus and Buddhists and Taoists and Wiccans. There are people who are polyamorous, people who are polygamous, people who are solosexual, people who are monks, and we should all respect each other's choices and not criticize people and put people down. One thing I don't like about Christians or Muslims. But I hope you enjoyed this video. So subscribe, give this video a like and a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.